Thank you. Let me just have a few more questions, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Mr. Godwin, you had kind of a unique perspective during the 1980s, during the Matabeleland massacre, and as a lawyer at that time. What do you suppose the response will be for those who want to hold people accountable? What are we likely to hear from the president, who was then the chief of intelligence at that point? What are we likely to hear?
I mean, I do think what I'm always astonished by, and I was a young reporter down there on the ground when it happened. It was a first big story of mine. And for me, the Matabeleland massacres were ZANU-PF's original sin. When I saw what that was and what it consisted of, it was something where I, along with so many people, had gone back to Zimbabwe after 1980, and this was going to be this big new progressive experiment, and I never recovered from it, and I don't think the country ever fully recovered from it. I think we lost our moral core, and we lost the whole sort of hopeful, thing that everybody had up until that point. What I am consistently surprised and amazed by is actually how generous of spirit the victims and the families of the victims are. What, in my view, and I really don't speak for these people. These people have their own voices and whatever. But in talking to them, what my takeaway is that they're incredibly reasonable, and what they really want is acknowledgement. They want acknowledgement of what has happened. They want an inquiry. They want this thing to not be swept under the carpet all the time. And for a government, for any government, it's actually a concession you can make that doesn't cost you that much. I mean, now that it's actually really quite a long time ago, and they've gone a little bit way once, they said moment of madness. Well, there's a slight problem with it being a moment of madness, which it took 4 years, 5 years, depending on how you calculate it. So it wasn't a moment of madness. And the other problem is that the two of the people who were most intimately involved in the Matabeleland massacre are now more senior than ever before. So in a sense, the more direct perpetrators, the most direct perpetrators, especially Parents Shiri, who was who commanded the troops in the field, who were doing this, is now in the cabinet. So I mean, in a perfect world, I think that really has to be dealt with, and the country can't move on really in its sort of the culture of impunity we were talking about before. It really starts with the Matabeleland massacre, and then it goes on through all these other things. ZANU-PF has been rewarded every time it's used violence for political ends. It's worked. If you just look at it on a cause and effect basis, it's worked for them, and they haven't had to pay, a price for it. And if that goes on, it becomes completely irrational for them to stop. Why would they stop? It works every time.
Thank you, Mr. B.